Alternate viewing of this meeting is also available for your convenience 24/7 on the YouTube channel, Sandoval Video Box, and on Sandoval's website, www.livesandoval.com. Consider subscribing to support Sandoval Video Box on YouTube by clicking both the subscribe button and bell to be notified of future meetings and presentations by Sandoval Communications. The meeting will begin shortly. Sandoval Communications thanks you for your support and participation by watching the meeting.
Good evening. The September 24th, 2020 Board of Directors meeting is now called to order at 6 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So when called, please state present, and for those on the phone, please state present via call-in. And remember, please, to mute your phone when not speaking. So Vice President Ron Spooner.
Present.
Treasurer Bill Tubb.
Present via GoToMeeting.
Ooh, nice. Director Scott D. Philippus.
Present.
Director Melanie Palmer.
Present.
Director Al Roper.
Present via call-in.
Okay, and Director Don Wells.
Here.
Fine, thank you. So quorum is established, and I'll ask the General Manager now to please confirm proof of notice. Okay, great, thank you. And are there any resident comments on tonight's agenda topics?
Yes, we do. We have one agenda item that came in, and this is from Mr. Dunkers. I'll read it. I noticed an update on the Risk Management Committee. Has there been any activity? I've not been informed of any. And this agenda item will be addressed later on in the meeting under item 8E.
Okay, great, thank you. That was just the one that you received before noon.
Right,
okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so next we have the approval of the past meeting minutes. Does the board have any edits or corrections to the August meeting minutes?
I move they're approved as presented.
I was just going to say, is there a motion? So Bill with the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Scott, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Unanimous then. All right, next I will give my board president's report. I want to say good evening to everyone. Tonight we're holding our 6th virtual monthly board meeting since the March election of the new board of directors and the immediate actions taken to address COVID initiatives. During the past 6 months, many of us have learned to adapt to virtual association-related meetings and efforts to conduct essential business as best we can due to social distancing requirements and COVID restrictions. I wish to take a moment to thank the current employees and our general manager for carrying out essential business operations while continuing to maintain a safe workplace. Residents have also been cooperative with making appointments and wearing of masks when entering the building to conduct essential business. Many of our committees are now meeting virtually to carry out their responsibilities, and their efforts are appreciated as well. The ARC has seen a higher number of applications over the past few months compared to previous times, and the Covenants Committee resumed their efforts last week for the first time since March. On Tuesday, our general manager and employees acted quickly and professionally to render assistance involving a medical emergency outside the clubhouse doors, as well as working with the Cape Coral Police Department during the conduct of the investigation. I want to say thank you to Casey for your efforts and your leadership during this tragic event. The 2021 budget is the main focus now for the general manager, as well as the finance committee and our treasurer. We do plan to hold a workshop, or in light of the times, a virtual workshop. More details will follow as the general manager works through the process. Tonight we will hear more about the planned clubhouse improvement project. I know everyone's interested and anxiously awaiting the planned construction. I've asked our communications committee and board liaisons to the communications committee to assist with providing periodic updates via email blast to residents, addressing the status and progress of the construction project once it is underway. Ideally, these updates will highlight efforts underway as well as what is on the horizon. I know we are all excited to initiate the construction and anxious to learn of the progress over the weeks and months ahead. Our general manager and her staff are responsible for managing the amenities, to keep them clean and safe, and to ensure they are being used according to the rules and the regulations. Once the clubhouse expansion and construction project is underway, we may experience some slight disruptions. So again, your assistance to adhering to any communicated changes or guidelines will be appreciated. The social committee and the lifestyle director have met virtually to discuss how our community can participate safely in support of upcoming activities. We'll be discussing Halloween later in the agenda. The feedback from residents in support of the recent outdoor concert and the night of karaoke at the Tiki Hut was very favorable, and there's more planned, so stay tuned for that. I'll stop here now and ask the treasurer to present his report. Thank you.
Okay, on August 31st, 2020, financial highlights are as follows. The August 31st, 2020 financials have been posted to our homeowners website for you to review. We received these financials on September 18th, and they've been distributed to the board and to the finance committee. The finance committee met on Tuesday, September 22nd, and reviewed the August financials, reviewed the tentative schedule for the 2021 budget, which Tracy will address later in her GM report, reviewed the September 16th upcoming clubhouse expansion budget, in particular how it impacts the 2021 budget. Upon completion of the review of the CenturyLink invoice, Jason Ward, head of Pope Accounting, Properties Accounting, discovered that either in 2017 or 18, which was prior to his taking this position, Sandoval failed to pay a monthly invoice of approximately $5,000, and even CenturyLink late at about 60 to 75 days since. This was corrected in May of 2020 when we paid CenturyLink $152,204. As a result of this, we will have 13 monthly payments in 2020 rather than the 12 which we expected. Fortunately, our budget for 2020 CenturyLink owners, which pays our bills, is $978,000, which will suffice to cover this extra payment. However, homeowners should be reminded the CenturyLink Sandoval MDU service agreement signed on September 18, 2015 calls for an annual increase of up to 4.5% beginning on the 5th anniversary of the effective date of the agreement. So this will begin on September 18, 2020. Finally, on the financials, a review of the HOA accounts receivable delinquency account reveals the following. At July 31, the total delinquent HOA assessments was $116,884, of which $72,829 were over 90 days past due. At August 31, the total of delinquent HOA assessments was $90,446, of which $66,224 were over 90 days past due. Of the $66,224 over 90 days past due on 8/31, a total of $62,229 was owed by 9 homeowners. That's 94% of the total outstanding amount. Finally, the August 30 balances of the Reserves Fund and the Telecommunications Surplus Fund can be found on the financial statements as presented on our website. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. And now I'll
Could I
ask.
possibly add to something that I saw in reviewing the financials?
Yes.
It's regarding home sales. I think it's something we're all interested in. Where are we? Where do we stand year to date? What is our expectation to meet the reserve requirements? And so from looking at the financial statement, we have deposited $234,000 year to date. During the month of August, we had 19 home sales, which was $57,000. So if you extrapolate that out, if we're at 78 at the end of this month, we are on course for 117 home sales for this year. Going to the reserve study and looking at the amount that the reserves recommend us a deposit in the study for this year, it's $354,000. If you extrapolate that out, that's 118 home sales. So we're within one home sale of being on target with the reserve. I thought that was important information. I will also mention in passing, we're working on the budget, is that next year, instead of $354,000, it would require $361,400. So that's an additional $7,400, and there would have to be, if we continue on the course of 117, 118 home sales, we've got to make up the difference of about $7,500, and that could be done in a number of ways by selling 2.5 more homes, adding an additional $65 to the homeowner's contribution when they purchase a home here, instead of $3,000, $3,065, or add 43 cents per month per HOA assessment, and any one of those three methods would satisfy the additional increase. And I'm not recommending any, I'm just putting in food for thought.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good. Very good. We actually had that discussion at the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday. We looked at the home sale. So thank you for sharing that with everybody.
I do have one quick question, though.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that after Bill's remarks that we are, in fact, those 9 that are the 94%,
Delinquents.
plus the other ones, all of their privileges have been removed, their passes have been deactivated.
We're going to address that tonight.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so next I'll ask Casey, please, to introduce our colleagues here, and her colleagues here from Pope. Welcome them, welcome, and present her general manager's report, please.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm on. So we have Ken and Jason Warren here with Pope Management. Ken's the senior regional manager, and so he's making his rounds away. And Jason, most of you are familiar, you've heard of him through the board. He's oversees the accounting with Pope Management. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And for hello, everyone. I'll go over my manager's report. The first topic that I have is staffing, and with the recent maintenance position departure, I am optimizing the current pool attendant staff we have to complete the grounds routine, trash on the grounds pickup, pet stations, and pickup, the trash receptacles as well. I'm working to utilize the staff we have to get the best productivity for the property. Please be patient with them as they each learn the routines and checklists. Also, please feel free to encourage them when you see them out on property taking care of the community. Vendors, I've been meeting with multiple different vendors and new vendors, and I'm pleased to hear professional approaches and service options, all while staying within the budget or even saving monies. We're looking to use a more professional security company. We're looking to save monies by combining the pool and cleaning into one contract, along with the ability to utilize a handyman service, which we'll have access to that starting next week, as piecework is needed throughout the community. Management would need to give 30 days notice to change these vendors. We're not in a set contract. There would be no new contracts signed longer than a year with 30-day clauses without reason to terminate any vendor. The next topic I have is the neighborhood liaison group, and I've had a few residents reach out to me in the last few weeks, and I wasn't very familiar with the neighborhood liaison group, so I appreciate the information that I've received from the board as well, And I'd like to take the time to acknowledge all of the neighborhood liaisons and let each of you know that I value your contribution to the community, and I do plan to meet with you monthly. With that, I'd like to reestablish this group after I'm able to complete the 2021 budget, as well as the meetings that go along with this process. I think November would be a good kickoff month for us to meet, possibly outside while social distancing. I have the list here of names and emails, and so I'm very excited, and I think it's a huge contribution to the community. The next topic is Halloween. I'll briefly discuss, however, later on in the meeting, we'll have some more detailed information. In regards to Halloween, we will still be paying close attention to CDC guidelines and local government mandates as it pertains to COVID. While we know Halloween will take place with or without the association's involvement, we are working to assist in proper procedures to keep the night as safe as possible. Wristbands will be required for residents, each resident guest, and we will start the sale of the wristbands on October the 6th by appointment only. We'll send out those different hours that we have extended some hours and the dates and times for that as well. We'll have one access point for the guest at Veterans, and entrance will be allowed from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will have 10 officers on site with 1 sergeant. We'll have 2 MT on site and 2 security officers as well as 3 staff members at minimum. The approximate expense will run around $4,900. Expected income should be around $5,000 at $1,350 wristbands sold. The wristbands will cost $4 each. No cash will be accepted, only check or card, and then there will not be any refunds. The next item I have is towing. Management is requesting that the board approve management to seek out other towing options, including the option of a towing company requiring a limited revenue each trip, possibly $75 to $100 per trip. We'd ask this not be paid if they were able to collect a vehicle in the evening that they came. And I would like to know if the board does support this type of contract with towing company and management to start seeking out some options. So you're welcome to give me your feedback via email on those. And then pool hours, to let the community know. Due to daylight savings time ending, and we'd like to stay similar to last year, effective October the 1st through October the 31st, 2020, the pool hours are Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m., and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the pool will close at dusk, which will be 6:30 p.m. For the month of November, the pool hours will be Monday through Sunday and close at 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., which is also similar to last year's hours. And then my last topic is Waste Pros, and we are very excited to have the consistent bulk trash pickup option, and I just would ask everyone work together to keep the community looking at its best and not put the bulk items out any earlier than Thursday morning or 24 hours prior to the scheduled pickup. They did come around Friday, and due to the amount that they received, they got so full they had to come back a second day Saturday, which was nice that they did that for the community. So that was very good. And that is all I have for the manager's report.
Okay, very good, thank you. Yeah, the former general manager and I, as a result of some of the residents complaining and raising concerns back in, I would say, maybe April, March, April, May, after COVID started and people were at home and cleaning out their homes and their garages and whatnot, there was all sorts of trash at the curb, to include appliances and carpeting and ripped up tiles and whatnot. So we approached Waste Pro then, trying to get a dedicated bulk pickup bi-weekly. And unfortunately, at that time, Waste Pro said they weren't able to. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just said thank you to Casey, and I'll restate that the former general manager and I approached Waste Pro in the April-May timeframe, recognizing that with the COVID restrictions and the stay-at-home mandate, residents were cleaning out their homes and garages and whatnot, and we saw a heavy amount of bulk waste put to the curb, and it sat for days and weeks at times, and neighbors raised their concerns. We approached Waste Pro at that time and requested a dedicated bulk pickup, perhaps bi-weekly, and unfortunately they weren't able to honor our request. So I'm very pleased that we have this weekly pickup on Friday mornings. So I think that'll be great for everybody.
A quick question.
Thank you.
What if the particular item is not picked up on Friday? What is our expectation for the homeowner?
They said, according to the Waste Pro information that was distributed, they said there's no need to call for pickups. So I know on Saturday morning I saw bulk trash still at the curb, and I was concerned. And later in the afternoon it was picked up. So I don't know if they're going to do a second swing through or if we need to call. Maybe we can follow up.
And and on another side, if an item is put out in advance or it wasn't picked up, it would be the responsibility. I have already, the compliance manager will be driving around and seeing, if it's left, they need to take care of getting that called and picked up, bringing it back in until that date. So
Responsibility of the homeowner, if the item is not picked up, to bring it back to the house to meet the appropriate schedule. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
I think that's important to
I think it's
state that out
important.
loud.
So out on Thursday, hopefully pick up weekly on Friday mornings. If not, again, the homeowner has the responsibility to bring it back in and then put it back out at the designated time frame, Thursday nights.
there may be some items that wouldn't qualify under that pickup, so that would be something they would need to take care of.
All right, thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have the ad hoc committee reports. So first, I'll ask Don Wells, please, on the clubhouse expansion.
Okay.
Thank you.
The clubhouse expansion is moving a step closer to actual construction. We are still awaiting permit approval from the city. And before we can move the bulldozers on site, we've got to get the permits. I spoke personally with Mark Stevens earlier this week, and we will have to first get this approval, and then action will start to occur. So our original anticipated 1st of October start, I think that's not quite going to happen. We are still anticipating an October start, but the actual date is still to be determined. Your board members on this committee have met with an attorney and gone through the contract line by line to ensure and assure the residents that we have a fair contract that will protect Sandoval throughout the project. More importantly, we have engaged a company, Stevens Construction, that has an outstanding reputation. As promised last month, we have received the current budget for the project. And that is right here. And if I could give it to the president and have her ensure that that's posted on the website, I think it's good information for the entire community.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And continuing, as a point of clarification, we have a few items in the construction budget which were previously soft cost items. To name a few, LCEC found that we did not need to purchase a transformer for the new building, with a cost savings of approximately $45,000. In order to put the two buildings on the same elevation, the city wrote back and required us to waterproof the first 2 feet of the new building and to include flood panels in all the doorways. This was added. We also have to have a 12-inch slab instead of a 4-inch slab so the building won't float away. And that added increased costs, which will take care of the $45,000 that we saved on not having to have a transformer. But that now is in the construction budget, whereas the other was something pre-construction, so you'll notice a little difference in the numbers there. And moving the volleyball court and the lights was added to the construction budget. That, again, was a soft item that we were going to take care of ourselves, but after realizing if we have the expertise on site, it's a whole lot simpler if we let them take care of it, then we know it's done, rather than us trying to get it bid out and done after the fact. The AV installation was also added to the construction budget. We got AV estimates, and that we knew what that was going to be, but if the construction company is in charge of getting that equipment in the building, I think, again, we have a second or third and fourth set of eyes to make sure that it's installed correctly. So I think that was a smart move. And the existing HOA office space will get new flooring and painting, and that was something that was not in the budget. It was not in the program. It was not that expensive, and I think we will still be able to come in on budget and by doing that, and I think that will be an added plus. With these changes, our projection of cost is still within our budget. Actually, it's $12,000 less than the budget presented to us in June, on June 18th. These figures still include a $100,000 contingency for unexpected construction issues. We, like every community member, we're anxiously awaiting, just like you all, to get boots on the ground and get started. That's my report.
Very good. Thank you, Don. All right. Next, this Taylor Morrison litigation. Ron, do you have an update?
We've had a significant amount of activity in this past month. We continue to work on the Phase 3 transition, and we expect to have a significant update in the next couple weeks. So I would expect that at the next board meeting. That's about it.
All right, thank you. The capital improvement projects, Al Roper.
I'm going to speak for Al since I'm here.
Okay, pardon me. Pardon me. I'm yelling at the phone.
We talked on the phone about 15 minutes before this meeting. We're working on getting the dog park projects finalized, and I can provide the president with the permit completion for the tennis courts.
Bravo. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Don.
And we had a little snag at the dog park because the landscape portion of the project failed the inspection. And new trees have been added, and with the assistance of Allison and Jim Swigert, we have been on the phone with the city this week, and also our general manager. We have to pay another $100 for reinspection. We also had to update the landscape plan. That was done, turned into Avalon. That has been updated. The money has been paid, and the inspection is tomorrow. So barring any unforeseen circumstances, the dog park will be done. And I think that's all we have for capital improvements.
Okay, very good. And I just want to express some appreciation to Al Roper, who was instrumental in the fence repair down in Phase 3, Vareo, in the Parkway. So, Al, thank you for your help and insistence with getting that fixed or done.
I might also say, along those very same lines, I don't take credit for these dog park and tennis court parking lots, dealing with all the different vendors that were involved with that, but Al did that, and he deserves the credit.
Okay, perfect. Big thank you to Al Roper. All right, next.
No problem.
Next, we have the management company requests for proposal, and I'll turn the floor over to Melanie Palmer, who's going to provide a bit of a briefing, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So we know that obviously everybody's very interested in what we've been doing for the property management RFP process and all of that. And just right off the top, we're not talking about any companies, we're not talking about any fees or anything like that. I wanted to take some time to be able to walk through what the process has been in order to start to get that information available to pass over to the board for review. So basically, I wanted to be able to kind of talk through a couple of different slides. We can go to the next one. And this shouldn't take too long. I just wanted to give you guys a pretty brief update. We can go to the next one here. So one of the main questions, just because we have a lot of new homeowners, wanted to talk through why are we going through this right now. And Poe property contract with Sandoval comes to a term in 2020. So across the board of directors, we always want to be able to ensure that we are continuing to receive top-notch service at a price we can afford for the residents. So with that in mind, we wanted to be able to go out and see everybody that's out there and be able to come back and validate that we are receiving all the services we can for the price at which we can pay for. We can go to the next slide. So just briefly, I wanted to walk through, I'll give you a quick introduction exactly on who's on the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee and what we've been up to. Then we'll talk through what our approach was and how we went about gathering the data throughout our process. And then finally, we can wrap up with next steps and what to expect over the next couple of months. So the other piece I want to point out just from this image here is just a quick timeline on where we've been and where we're headed. So in July, we released the RFP. In August, we received proposals back from everybody that was interested in responding. And then we really spent most of the month of August and September going through and evaluating the information we received and recommending, in September we'll end up recommending our information over to the board for further evaluation. October we hope to have a board decision, and then November we would move into contract negotiations and awards. We can move on to the next slide. So just starting with who we are and what we set out to do, and I want to, Kathy and Scott, feel free to jump in and ad-lib anywhere you need to. We can go to the next slide. So the committee right now consists of 3 board members, Kathy, Scott, and myself, and 3 resident volunteers, Dave Saganik, John Elkins, and Rob Zakovich. And we've been meeting weekly since our first meeting, I believe, was in the month of May, and we've been meeting weekly anywhere from 1 to 2 hours actually on a call together working through stuff, and countless hours going through and reviewing various information on our own to come back being informed and have productive meetings. So a couple of items I want to actually be able to call out was that very early on when we established this committee, we wanted to make it extremely clear that everybody needed to remain professional and refrain from discussing any matters that we were going through during those calls. And if you haven't heard much about the process and what we've been doing on this ad hoc committee, then that's because the committee has actually been doing their job. And it isn't for lack of transparency or anything like that, any reasonings that we're withholding information. It was really done intentionally to ensure that we're creating a level playing field. We didn't want anybody going back and talking to a neighbor and saying, hey, did you hear what question they're going to ask? And then somebody reaching out to a specific company and, just word getting around, and then it kind of taints the whole process that we're trying to create a very equal playing field. So if you haven't heard much, that's why, and you can blame us. The second piece on that is that the team was required to keep an open mind. So we know that topics within Sandoval can get very heated, and I know there's lots of opinions from residents around what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing, but it was required that our committee members keep an open mind and not let emotions or past experiences, good or bad, cloud any future judgment.
And the confidentiality.
Oh, and that's the other piece too. So everybody was required to sign a confidentiality agreement. And that's why you're not hearing anything about what we've gone through. But in saying that, I wanted to be able to walk through what we have been doing. Like I said, we won't include details of some of that information we gathered, but you'll at least understand the process. We can go to the next one. So after our first step of assembling our team, the second task was to identify what work we could leverage. So previously, we've gone through multiple RFPs on various items, and we know a few years ago we went through a process for an RFP for our property management company. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to go back, review all of that past information, determine what we could bring forward, and kind of in a mindset of knowing what we know. If we knew now what we didn't know then, how would we have perhaps approached things differently? So how can we potentially apply lessons learned and improve where possible? We can go to the next slide. So some of the key highlights that came about after going through and reviewing some information was that it seems that a lot of information that we received was what the proposals wanted us to hear. Or at least wanted to provide to us. So we weren't able to really dig down and ask them some of the extremely specific questions that we needed answers to. And I know there was a few presentations that were done. Presentations tend to be a little bit sales pitchy, and we really wanted to kind of cut through some of the fluff. The second item that we learned was that it really was hard to do a valid comparison between one company and another. And what I mean by that is everybody submitted their proposals and submitted their information, but it was all sort of in their own style and in their own format. So trying to extrapolate from that and how to compare one proposal to another when they're both providing different information was extremely challenging. It was just very hard to be able to do that apples-to-apples comparison. The third item was salary and burden just varied greatly. And again, it was because they were presenting information in different formats, it was really hard to go back and kind of roll all that up and get a high-level view on what that would actually cost the community. And cost formats weren't consistent. So just some people would be able to say, these are the items, this is how much we're charging. Another company might be 50 grand less, but what are they charging and what's the value there? So it was hard to really be able to tell exactly what we were getting from each individual one across the board. So we can go to the next one. So that's basically what we learned, and what the company, what our committee basically set out to do, and our approach on going through this is what I want to go through next. We can go to the next one. Okay. So our first step was to be able to outline what our objectives are. So we needed to define what exactly was important. So by identifying the areas that were fundamental to the successful growth and development of our community, we were able to narrow down exactly what types of criteria we wanted to walk through and dig deeper into. And as mentioned previously, we wanted to also be able to provide an unbiased evaluation. So we didn't want necessarily to come back as a committee and say, you know what, we really like this guy. This is the one that we really like. We wanted to be able to define a method that allowed us to evaluate companies based off the information they provided and allow us to take a data-driven approach to be able to analyze that. Next slide. So where we started was, as a committee, we were just on some calls, brainstorming and trying to collect some information, and all started kind of sharing what information would we want to know, what questions would we want to ask. And as we were throwing around those various questions that we were each interested in trying to gain the answers to, they all started to naturally fall into a bucket or into specific categories. And we went through and bucketed everything so that it came out to be these were the 6 key criteria in which we wanted to evaluate any potential proposals. The first one being ability to perform, the level of quality, the services as they relate to financial, services administrative related. Of course, cost is always a huge factor. We wanted to make sure we included that. And then innovation is the final category. And innovation was really something that came out of, if we're going to be asking such scripted questions and we're saying, just give me exactly this information, and we're asking you to fit it into a box, we wanted to make sure that there was an area in here that allowed companies to really go outside of that strict format and tell us what they've done, what's been innovative. Have they created a new process or implemented new technology, streamlined efficiencies? What are they proud of, and what should we know about them? So that was actually a really interesting category based off the feedback we came in. We can go to the next slide. So task 2 was, how do we get to this? How do we actually try to create a process that allows us to compare any companies across the board consistently? And we came to templates, basically templates across the board. We wanted to make sure that there wasn't any softball questions that we gave one company and then we gave the really hard questions to somebody else. It was very consistent, and we wanted to make sure that a level playing field was accomplished. Okay? So this is where it gets really intense, because basically what we ended up doing, and we had 13 respondents. We had all these responses that came in, and some of them varied from, just regular papers that were submitted down to 3-ring binders, boxes, spiral bound stuff. I mean, this is a lot of information to go through. And from a committee's perspective, I would say we've gone through each one of these proposals at least 3 times.
Easily.
Wouldn't you? I mean,
Easily.
really, because when we started going through things, so I'll keep this one just so I can talk through it.
At least from a services standpoint and a cost standpoint separate.
So yeah, that was even another round through it. So what we ended up doing was every single proposal that was provided here, let me grab one of these. So when they provided their proposal, they all included our template of questions, and then some of them added in extra marketing information, which is just kind of nice to have. We go through, we mock it up, and go through all of that. After we had reviewed an entire proposal by one company, each one of us, each one of the 6 on the committee, went through independently and we scored every single question. So we went down the list and created our own sort of value for each one, and we ranked every single question from 1 to 5. And if somebody gave an exceptional response, they got extra points. If somebody gave less of a response, they got less points. So by going through this whole process, what we were ultimately able to do is go back and refer to each one of those 6 categories. What was the score for each one of those? And in addition to being able to walk through what these scores were, again, like I said, we wanted to make sure it was very unbiased. So personally, if I had a company that I loved and I wanted, this is the one I want to get in here, I could have gone through my sheet and said 5s down the board, every single one. It still wouldn't have mattered because there are 5 other committee members that are doing the exact same evaluations. Never mind the fact that if I had done that, I probably would have gotten yelled at by my committee and had to justify all of the answers and why I was going through and ranking somebody. And that's why I say we went through these multiple times, because when you go through the first round, okay, so you're scoring stuff, and then you go through 3 or 4 more, and it's like, you know what, I need to go back to that first one and make sure that I marked them equal to what I did the next one. Just to make sure that we were all not putting our own spin on things and making sure we were being fair.
Can I just interject?
Yes, absolutely.
But we also came together on the weekly calls, and we identified, for next Tuesday, let's look at these next 3 or 5 proposals. And then we highlighted what some of the strengths were, if there were red flag items, and we talked about, the scoring, and we found that we were pretty much all on the same page as to what was exceptional, what was status quo, or
Right.
and when there was information lacking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even to the point there was a couple of questions in here that were just kind of an optional field. Just optional. If you wanted to add something, you could add something. If you didn't have anything else to add, you didn't add anything. And we wanted to even regroup on that to validate, when they're not answering a question, are we all putting the same response down for that? So, just trying to make sure that we were all aligned with how we were viewing each one of these individually. So basically, as we went through this process, and like I said, there were 13, and there were over 120 questions in our template. So over 120 questions, 13 proposals times 6 committee members. It ended up being a pretty substantial amount of data. So we can go to the next slide. So what we actually ended up doing with that data, the next one. So what we actually ended up doing with that data is we created a matrix, and across the board we were able to see what each company, what their score ended up coming out to be under each one of our 6 categories. So under ability to perform, every company had a score for that, and each one of them we went through. I want to point out that with the exception of cost, we did not look at cost at this point in the process. We were strictly looking at service and level of quality, or level of service and quality. And the thought around this was we didn't want cost to cloud our judgment as far as being able to say, well, this one might cost a lot less, but they don't meet our standards in delivering the quality we expect. So we just didn't even want to start looking at cost until we were able to evaluate who's actually meeting our level of standards, and then we would come back and actually add in the cost piece. So that's why those pieces are grayed out on the matrix. Those were added back in after the fact. But in this first round, when we were just reviewing based off service and quality, we didn't want to include the cost at that point. Next one. Okay. So speaking of costs, now this might look familiar to a lot of people. Basically, what we went through is, from very early on, and even in the beginning of the presentation, we said our goal was to ensure residents continue to receive top-notch service at a price we can afford. So the first question of what is top-notch service, we were able to address that question based off our scoring matrix and how everybody fell in line with that. And then the second question around, well, what can we actually afford? So what we did was we took the costs that each company submitted its own costing template as well. So we didn't just rely on generic information. It was each company broke down their cost and submitted it to us in the same format. So by taking those values and plugging them into our actual budget, so this is our 2020 Sandoval admin budget, just looking at the admin piece because that's the part where it impacted it. We were able to look at that first line of, say, healthcare. That was a question that was asked on section 5.8 of our template and plug in the values for each individual company and what their costs were here. Because, again, to go back with what we did previously, it was really hard to tell what costs were already in, like the management fees, right? So the base management fee, that cost might be extremely high or extremely low, but without knowing what that's including, it becomes challenging to do a side-by-side comparison. So we basically went through and plugged in all the values into there, so when we do provide this information over to the board, they have a complete picture on each one of these companies, what it would mean to our bottom line budget. Next. Thank you. So basically, that's been our process, and I wanted to make sure that we took the time to walk through this and explain it. Our committee has been extremely busy. We have certainly had difference of opinions along the way, but we've worked through all of that. Everybody has remained extremely professional, open-minded, and very dedicated, because when you look through this amount of information, it's pretty vast, and like I said, we went through multiple times to be able to make sure we were doing the right thing. So as we go to next steps here, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so just to quickly review where we are now. We've gone through, we rated each proposal, we tallied up the results, we determined, so when all these values ended up coming down, there was pretty clear indications around the highest versus the lowest, and they naturally just broke into different areas. So we were able to agree on, from this point forward, this is the level of service and quality we would want, and then once we pulled in those costs, we were able to now say, okay, so given these costs and this value, this is ultimately where we want to be. So right now we're in between, we added in the costs, and we've almost gotten to defining that short list to be able to pass over to the board for review. We want to be able to go through and validate that all the numbers and everything is accurate, and from there we'll put together a small couple pages of pros and cons that we've seen and all this data that the board can be able to dig into, as well as reference information. We did not reach out to references. We are strictly data-driven at this point, and we're providing the data behind what we were able to learn, and then each board member will have the opportunity to reach out to any references they feel is needed. We can go on to the next one. So again, coming up with what's next, September, we're in the process of wrapping up our findings. We'll deliver our data analysis to the board, give them the references. October, we anticipate that the board will be able to go through, review the analysis that we have. The committee is available for any questions or clarifications as needed. we can go through and identify the top picks and schedule any go-forward interviews with the board for additional information and decision-making. And then into November, we hope to conduct contract negotiations and announce the property management company selected to the community. And next slide. And that's it. I mean, our goal has pretty much always been from the beginning, we want to make Sandoval the best it can be, and we want to ensure that we are providing the best services for the cost that we can afford, and just doing our due diligence to always check and see if there's something out there that we may not be aware of, or if we're quite content with where we are. So it's all based off the questions we had asked. We tried to do as much as we could to be consistent. We had a few responses from people to say, wow, that's an intense RFP. Like, I think they were a little surprised sometimes to have that many questions pointed very direct. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the board. Oh, I guess the one other thing I do want to mention, just because there is a lot of data and information here, there's still a few steps to be happening here, so we still will maintain our confidentiality. We're not going to be disclosing the findings, and the board will be able to make a decision, go forward, and again, just keep that level playing field out of respect for all the companies as well. They've put in a lot of effort for these proposals.
Scott, would you like to add anything?
I'd just like to say, on behalf of myself, for the members of the team and the board members, it was just volumes and volumes of information, and as reported by some of the other committees of what they've done throughout the year. I just feel that, just going to be a little bit of a sidetrack, so just bear with me here, is that some of the keyboard critics on social media asking what the board does, and I'm just take the liberty to go here, is that you see tonight what the board members do, and they put in hours and hours of volunteer work for no cost to the association. The board can sit back and the members can sit back and say, we are just driven by statute and have our 1 or 2 meetings and just present a budget. These hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours, save this development tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So for those who are criticizing board members and volunteers for not doing anything, I personally take exception to that because I know what every board member does. I see it in the reports. I know the folks who go out there and reset gate hits or reset circuit breakers for the aeration. So I congratulate every one of the board members and volunteers and staff who make Sandoval a great place to live despite the naysayers.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you. All right, any questions? On the phone, any questions? Bill or Al? I can't see any heads nodding.
I have none.
All right.
Not at this time.
All right, so next we'll move to Bill on the risk management, and we did have that question from the one resident regarding the status of the group.
Mr. Dunker.
The Risk Management Committee, because of COVID, because several have gone north, has not met, so there's been no change since last month.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So you can respond back to him by email? Okay, great. All right, next on the agenda, we have the coronavirus initiatives. And basically, at this time, we remain operating under the current COVID restrictions and measures. There's been no change. Florida remains at phase 2, while the state of emergency was extended through November 3rd. And to minimize safe operations, the clubhouse remains closed for social gatherings and activities. And additionally, traffic through the clubhouse and closed area has been minimized. This was the direction we received from our Association Council, as well as some of the guidance from Pope. So thank you, everybody, for that. Question?
On that very topic, I don't know whether you're going to discuss the Halloween, but I think that after hearing what you've just said about phase 2, everything's closed, I think having the Halloween and wristbands and the gates open and all that's a tremendous mistake.
Okay, we're going to get into the Halloween.
Well, I just think that, you're talking about, I don't see Halloween on here.
Yes, it's on the agenda.
It's 14. on the agenda.
Page 2.
I don't have page 2, so I don't have it. Well, I'll hold that, but I just heard you say that we're following the guidelines. Everything is still closed, and I think you need to keep that statement in mind when we start talking about Halloween.
Okay. All right, thank you. Old business street paving. Ron, any updates?
Yes. Unfortunately, in the initial bidding process, despite the request, this Somerville's Road was left out. I did meet with them personally and get an updated bid, showed them the areas, and we've received that, and we're evaluating it, so we expect to be signing a contract pretty soon. So that's the update.
Okay. Next, the next topic we have is the gate strikes and procedures. And this was a question that was raised by a resident last month, and we said we would address it at today's meeting. So I'm going to hand it over to Casey, please.
Okay. This is a brief. We do currently have standard operating procedures in place for the gate strikes, which is detailed, and this is a summary of it. The Veterans Gate, which is our oldest gate, is fully functioning, and now everything's been completed. We are going to be adding a loop detector to improve efficiency on that gate. And Vera is contacted via a motion detector. When someone's driving through the gate, they monitor that, and then they receive an alert. They then take a look at the video. We go through, we get notified. We go through an administrative procedure. If we're able to link the guest, vendor, or vehicle to a resident, a gate strike letter with a fine is sent to the resident. If it is an outside vendor, we will attempt to send an invoice to the company the vehicle is affiliated with. Previous to this procedure, the information was difficult to decipher and not readily available or tracked properly. Currently and moving forward, we will follow the gate strike protocol. Fines are at a minimum of $100. To date, we've collected around $400 in gate strike fines and possibly more, as some of it might be in miscellaneous income. Some gate strike income may be in that category. We're not 100% sure. However, moving forward, we've adjusted some items in the office to where we can streamline that, and when they pay, it can go straight to that line item moving forward. And that's all I have on that.
Okay, anybody else have any additional points regarding the gates?
I just have one question on the gate case. Do we know what the majority of the strikes are after reviewing the film? Are the majority of strikes because of driver error or because of mechanical failure with the gates?
I would say driver error. I'm not aware of, since I've been here, mechanical error.
Okay,
so,
perfect.
Driver.
And I would like to probably echo that for those of us who've reset the gates numerous times. The reason we have signage out there is because there are two lines, and the one sign says stop here. You need to stop there and wait for the electronics to catch up between the actuator, the loop, so we can go through that at all times. But again, for those who are blaming a gate system, I'm glad that you're here to say, and I will agree with you after seeing some of the tapes, that it is driver error. So maybe we need to re-educate, maybe through our communications on how to go through the system with your vehicle.
Great idea, yes. Okay, wonderful.
And what about the exit gates?
The exit gates, none of those have cameras. None of the exit gates have cameras on them. So that was a question, but they do not have them.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything to add? All right. Next, we have the fining and suspension levies that Casey's going to present.
Okay.
So we had actually got to meet the Covenants Committee, excellent committee, and we had the first Covenants hearing that was September the 17th, 2020. And what I have here is, and I can, what I have attached here is based off of the recommendations and the voting process at the Covenants Committee for some fines to be levied as well as some suspensions to be levied. So with that, the first item I have is the gate strikes, and the Covenants Committee voted to fine account number 16963 in the amount of $100. And then the second gate strike, the Covenants Committee voted to fine account number 17446 in the amount of $100. And so if someone from the board would like to make a motion to approve these two fines, and then a vote take place.
Okay, so is there a motion to then fine, as Casey outlined, the two $100 fines against the two cases?
I'll make the motion so we could have discussion on that.
Okay, and a second? Anyone?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, second for discussion. Don. All right, discussion. Scott?
Once we're going into those, I'm sure that you have reviewed the footage, and we are 100% sure before we find someone that it has been driver error and not mechanical failure of the system.
Correct. That was the finding from the Covenants Committee hearing, yes.
Any other discussion? Done? Melanie? All right, so those in favor of fining these two, are you calling them case numbers?
They're account numbers.
Account numbers.
So rather than resident
Yes.
name and address, this is linked to their.
Right. Mm-hmm. So for these two account numbers, the two gate strikes, $100 fines, $100 fine each. All those in favor? No.
Aye.
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 What's wrong?
Aye.
Aye. Do you have a question, Melanie?
I guess I kind of just wanted to go back real quick. What about when it's a guest or a guest of a resident? Are we tracking that back to the resident and also? Oh.
Yes. All right. So for the motion that Scott made to fine these two account numbers, the $100 fines each, seconded by Don, the ayes have it, so the motion has passed.
Okay, thank you all. The second item I have here is delinquent accounts, which Scott, you were mentioning, and I know Bill with his report wanted us to follow up with that. So the Covenants Committee voted in favor of suspension of usage rights for the homeowners with delinquent accounts presented to them at the Covenants Committee meeting. And those accounts were substantial balances that the use rates were voted to suspend those until the account became current. So I have the following accounts that were approved to go ahead and suspend the amenity use rates. Account numbers 17420, 18490, 17955, 16431, 17159, 17378, 15510, 16763, 15585, 17138, 16261, 16294, 15582, 16893, 17702, 16672, 17030, 16226, and then we have 16853, 23640. These would be 90 days past due accounts. So those were the ones that were determined by the Covenants Committee, and they voted on that to go ahead and suspend those. So if someone from the board would like to make a motion.
So the motion on the 21 delinquent, right? 21 delinquent accounts as identified by the account numbers, 90-day past due. I'm sorry, Bill?
I so moved.
Okay. A second?
Those 21 suspended.
Ron seconds then. All right, any discussion?
Do we know out of that 21, and maybe Bill has that number because you alluded to it, Bill, in a little bit of your report, what the aggregate number of delinquency is in dollars for those 21?
Since I have not seen the list, I do not have that number, but I know for the top 9 on that list, the number was $62,229. So for the other 11, they're probably around $1,000 each.
Very good.
And then my next question would be, a while back, we had instituted a policy, if you will, where people who were affected by COVID through their work, who were out of work, could reply or could request relief from their dues, if I remember, if that's how that was.
Right.
And my question would be, are any of those, and I believe it was only 2 maybe people who requested 4, are any of those 4 on that list?
I think there was 4, and I can tell you none of the 4 are on this list because this list is people who were deep in debt before COVID ever struck.
Okay, and that was my concern because I wanted to make sure that the people we were granting relief for a legitimate reason were not finding those people and putting them into a more exacerbated position. So thank you for that information.
And this won't be any fining, just not having...
Suspension of, correct.
Yes, yes.
All right, so that concludes that topic, right?
We had a motion
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry, the
floor.
motion. Vote. So those in favor of suspending the usage rights for these 21 accounts, all in favor, please? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And, all right, unanimous 7. Thank you.
Are you discussing deed restrictions?
Not at this time. So for the next one, we'll have those on there.
All right, next on the agenda, we wanted to address the November schedule in that the fourth Thursday of the month is Thanksgiving. So we're looking to reschedule that meeting. And I think, Bill, you made the recommendation, right, to push it to December 3rd?
Yes, I did. December 3rd would be the next Thursday.
The following Thursday, rather than move it up. We wouldn't have the financials if we were to move it up. So we're looking to push it back to December 3rd. So I'd like to open that up for discussion. Any concerns?
Is there also a budget meeting in November?
We plan to, yeah.
So there'll be 2 meetings.
Well, in November, there'll be one. The December 3rd will be the November meeting. Is that what you mean?
Well, when you have the budget, there's a budget, formal budget meeting.
Right.
Is that going to be December the 3rd?
No, that would be
No,
too late. No,
it would be earlier in
So you're
November.
going to have another meeting in November where you're discussing the budget.
The budget,
and
correct.
Then where the budget would be approved after
Correct.
you've notified all the residents. So there's going to be another meeting in November.
Correct, the budget, the annual budget meeting.
Yeah, is that dated? What the day's that?
No,
No, not yet.
We
We have a tentative, but we're still working on the timeline.
Yeah.
Well, is
That would
it
be
possible
special
that that's in lieu of the regular meeting, or is that in addition to? I mean, then what are you going to do in December if you're having one on the 3rd, and then probably about the 4th Thursday's going to be the holiday?
Yeah, it's going to be Christmas Eve, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I think you need to. We've got 3 meetings here. I think we need to discuss
We
not
have
just that one.
The annual budget
Correct.
will be early, mid-November timeframe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bill, do you think we can have one meeting in November, as Don had pointed out, the annual budget along with the monthly?
Or
Board
have
meeting?
one in the second week in December, which would take care of both of those others.
Or we can have a combined December, strictly board meeting for November and December timeframe?
I think that makes more sense to me, but I just,
All right.
just discussion.
All right, let's see what the consensus
Repeat the
is here.
question. I don't understand it. Kind of ran together on me.
We know that in November, we'll have the annual budget meeting where the board votes on the budget. So why don't we, what Don was suggesting was have the annual budget meeting in November, and then in December, look to have a combined
I don't
board
see how you
meeting
can cram all
in
these
lieu
in,
of
because
a
if you have
November
meeting December the 3rd.
board meeting and then a December board meeting, because that interferes then with the, or conflicts with the holidays, Christmas holiday. So the two meetings would be November, the budget meeting, and then December would be the combined November-December standing board monthly meeting.
We do.
Well, I think the budget meeting has usually been a special call meeting because it's so involved with that particular issue.
Well, yeah. And
Do
then
you
would just
intend to
discuss
have
it.
all of the business in that meeting as well as the
No.
budget
No,
discussion?
no, that would be strictly.
No. We would have the budget meeting, solely the topic, the budget, and the board discussion and voting on the budget in November. And then look to have
So
one
So
board.
then you're suggesting a special meeting for the board in November to discuss the budget, no regular board meeting in November, and a meeting at sometime in December to cover November and December business?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So we'll have those dates.
I still think the December 3rd potentially could work for the November, December, because you're going to need to do the budget meeting very early on, really early on in November.
Right.
I mean, if you wanted to do the budget meeting
think the
really
budget
early
meeting
on in
is like the
November, it
middle
gives
of
you a whole nother
November,
month
then this, I
to
would think
meet.
the 10th.
If you even still do it December the 3rd, you can do your November and December business.
Why not have your budget meeting the middle of November and then your other meeting the 10th of December?
Because the mail outs for the coupons takes quite a bit to get processed. So if we do the budget meeting in the November, it's not, management recommends that it doesn't take place that late in the game because the coupon books take time to order, they take time to process, and then mail out.
Now, hold it. If we meet in mid-November for the budget meeting, set the budget, they have all the rest of November and all of December to mail out the things.
6
If we don't
weeks.
meet till December for the budget meeting, then it's going to be tight.
Right. I don't have the calendar in front of me.
So that was just the ask. So in order to get those coupon books mailed out in a timely manner, ordered, processed.
So I don't have a calendar in front of me. What's the, Scott, are you looking at a calendar? In November. When's November 11th? What day of the week is November 11th?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So what about November 12th? That's a Thursday,
Thursday.
correct?
Sole budget meeting.
Yeah, I think that was what was proposed, wasn't it?
That's pretty close to the
I think that's what you had on your tentative.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right, so Thursday, November 12th for the budget meeting is proposed. And then Thursday, December 10th for the combined November, December board meeting, full board meeting, is what is proposed. Can we get agreement on that? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Melanie?
I second that.
And Don seconds. All in favor?
Well, discussion first.
Oh, discussion, I'm sorry.
Meeting on December 10th, we will not have the December financials. We'll only have the Novembers, but if that's okay, then I have no problem with it.
You'll just have to make it work. The only way you would have the December financials if you had it Christmas Eve, and I don't think we're doing that.
Didn't we do that last year too? Wasn't there one month we
I think-
didn't have?
I think it was combined.
I think
We could
really
also
this
just
should
make
be,
it the first week of January. I'm not pleased that we're going to miss an entire month. We have a lot of things going on, especially with the new management company. Christmas isn't our only option, first week of January. And frankly, if we have to meet twice in January, well, I'm willing to do that.
Well, with respect to that, though, when the board is going to get that's good.
That's November.
Right, that's November. So if we just do a budget meeting and not a meeting like you're suggesting, the board won't have that time to go through that RFP for the management company. So we're going to have to schedule a November board meeting so the board will have the opportunity to, the ad hoc committee will avail themselves to whatever presentation need be and discussion.
Personally, I would prefer November 12th for the budget meeting, go back to December 3rd for the regular November meeting when we could discuss the ad hoc committee's recommendation, and then the first week in January for the December meeting when we would have the final December 31st. If it's going to take, well, no, we wouldn't. We have the November.
That's reasonable.
That's feasible. What's the first? I don't have a calendar in front of me. I'm sorry. What's the first Thursday in January?
First Thursday in
Oh, it's the
January is
first
the
of-
7th.
Probably we will not have financials the first week in January either, because you can ask Jason, he's sitting there. Normally he has to keep the financials open longer because of its year end. He's got to close a lot of things.
But then we would have the January 28th, we would have the standing January budget, or the January board meeting, correct? Okay, your thoughts? Is that amenable to you?
Yes, I like that plan.
Okay, so we need a motion then for the dates that we discussed. November 12th for the budget meeting. December 3rd was proposed for the what would be the November board meeting. January 7th, and then January 28th for the January meeting. Is there a motion?
So that's November the 12th budget,
Yeah.
And
December
then-
3rd
December the 3rd.
would be the regular board meeting for November.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we schedule a meeting on November the 12th as a budget meeting to discuss the budget approval only, that we meet on December the 3rd as our normal November board meeting. We meet on January 3rd for our more normal December meeting, and then we meet on January 28th for the January board meeting.
All right, and you said January 3rd, Bill, or January 7th?
I thought that's what.
7th.
Yeah, the 7th. The 3rd is a Sunday, so the 7th.
The 7th, okay. Then I make my motion to say January the 7th for our normal December meeting.
Is there a second? Ron, second. Further discussion?
Aye.
Aye, okay, unanimous then. Thank you. And we'll get something out to the new schedule with the dates confirmed then. Thank you. All right. Next on the schedule, we have Halloween, and I know there's a lot of interest in the community, and as Don said, some concerns as well. So we know Halloween 2020 falls on a Saturday this year, so the youngsters will be off from school, and they're anxious to engage in the community Halloween fun. This year, it also happens to be a full moon and daylight savings time. The social committee and the lifestyle director met virtually to discuss measures to restrict Halloween, recognizing that trick-or-treat is a tradition and that Halloween was going to happen within the community. On Monday night, the Center for Disease Control, CDC, came out with holiday guidelines noting that traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating can be risky for spreading the viruses. We believe trick-or-treating can be done safely as modified in our proposed plan, and only if residents and their guests are careful to distance and wear cloth face coverings while outdoors, moving among the streets and neighborhoods. In developing our proposed plan and addressing logistics, which was included in the board package, did you have it or no?
I have it.
Okay.
That's why I brought it up.
In the board package, our focus was on measures to restrict this event and to promote health, safety, and the welfare within our community on this evening. It's important to note that Halloween in Sandoval is not open to the general public. Our proposed plan restricts our night of Halloween in an effort to protect our residents. And this includes limiting the gate access. Guest vehicle lanes will be shut down between 4 and 9 p.m. The advanced purchase of wristbands are required for all guests, adults and children, guests of residents, to restrict the flow of guests entering our community. we're proposing a charge of $4 for wristbands to defray the cost of police security. The Cape Coral Police Department, they served a security detail for us last year, and they've already been approached about a cost estimate for providing security at our gates and within our community this year as well. Only residents can purchase wristbands at $4 per wristband for their guests entering the community to trick or treat, and residents would be responsible for their guests. Residents who choose to participate in trick-or-treating are encouraged to come outside onto their driveway to set up a table to distance themselves from the trick-or-treaters and to issue the individually wrapped treats rather than leave a bowl for many hands to reach into and help themselves. Trick-or-treaters are encouraged not to ring the doorbells or touch the door handles. This was the concern of the CDC. That was considered risky. But rather stop at those tables set up by residents in their driveways, those residents that are willing to participate in the event. For those residents not interested in participating, we suggest you turn off your lights, your exterior lights, and residents would be encouraged to use the Trafalgar and Pine Island gate to enter and exit during this evening time frame. The Lifestyle Director is working with the Communications Committee and the Social Committee to finalize the Halloween plan, as well as provide the suggested guidelines based on the CDC recommendations, the times and the sale of the wristbands, the gate operations, as well as provide residents with the suggested social distancing guidelines for trick-or-treating. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for discussions. Thank you. And you should have the proposed plan and the cost estimates, as well as the guidelines for trick-or-treating. And we will send out the CDC link as well, and people can assume their level of risk and whether they choose to participate or not. So
I would just like to go over a few of the things in the CDC guidelines. It says that they don't think there should be any door-to-door trick-or-treating. No indoor parties or haunted house, so I assume we're not going to do that in the clubhouse.
no haunted house, right?
Okay, then it recommends...
It's at your house this year.
Yeah, right. It means to be safe. Small outdoor, socially distancing. The distance, the greater the distance, the better. Costume masks are not substitutes for face masks. They're not the same. And that it should be done by members celebrating within their own households and partying virtually according to the CDC. Now, you're talking about selling wristbands, 1,000, so that you would have enough money to pay for all these police here. We have our clubhouse, which is Phase 2. You can't have a group of 15 people come in here and play cards, but you're going to have 3,000 people walking around on our streets, including the residents. I think that it's a grave mistake and a big contradiction. I think that if you're going to restrict the clubhouse to no one, you can't open the streets up to have all this. Another thing that you have to take into consideration, that in the spread of COVID, the younger age group, of which many of these folks in the trick-or-treating age groups could be positive for COVID, and you run the risk of that spreading to some of our older members of the community just by being out and around on the streets. And I think it makes no sense to have a function where you've got 3,000 people walking around on the streets here when you've got your clubhouse closed. If we're going to agree to do this for the Halloween, then I think we need to reevaluate our other COVID requirements, because I see a big contradiction.
Can I add a couple of things here? Casey, I got a couple questions.
Yes.
Are we restricting use of the basketball courts?
No.
Are we restricting use of the pool?
No.
Are we...
Well, we're still at 50%
Yes.
We're at 50%.
capacity.
Are we restricting the use of any of the courts, like bocce ball or tennis?
No.
Okay. So we're just limiting activities inside the clubhouse, and I think that's
Setting guidelines around.
And you're talking groups. All these things that you've brought up here. Maybe the pool would have 90. The bocce might have 10 or 11.
In
the
a confined
basketball
space,
might. That doesn't matter. So they're going to be confined space on the streets. I mean, it's going to be packed. If you're selling 1,000 tickets, it's going to be packed. You are not using the same criteria for this as you are for everything else.
No, I do think we are, because it's outside, and first of all, you have the option whether or not you want to participate in the outside activities. By having something inside this room, you're putting our staff at risk because they don't have the option to not be here.
Correct.
It's hypocrisy.
It's not
hypocrisy.
an activity. It's a holiday that's taking place with or without.
It's hypocrisy. You're using two standards because you want one and you don't want the other.
It's not an activity run by the association. It's a national holiday, Halloween. So I just wanted to clarify. It's not an activity going on. Nor does the association have the ability to restrict guests coming to visit them.
You can have a recommendation that we at Sandoval, due to COVID problems this year, we're not going to have that opportunity to go out and to trick or treat in our community. If you were playing NFL football, the stadium's empty. They're playing football. I just don't see how you could justify allowing that many people covering the streets. There's no way they're social distancing, but you're going to do it because you want to do it.
Well,
and I won't say any more about it, but I just want to be on record that I'm opposed to it, and I would suggest you ask some of the other board members. Al might have a comment as well.
I would like to know what your solution is. So no police. We open up the gates and just tell them don't come in.
My solution is you announce that we're not doing trick-or-treating in Sandoval.
How can we stop that? You can't stop residents.
As Sandoval.
You can mitigate, but you can't.
Yeah, we're looking to mitigate
events.
with safety measures. We are responsible for providing a safe environment.
Your solution
we know it's
will
Halloween.
double the amount of people that come in here.
I don't think it would.
But first of all, how are you going to tell your residents you're not allowed to go outside and visit neighbors?
And no guests.
I guarantee you're going to have people that are. We've already started to see some of this stuff. You can't tell people that they're not going to socialize with their neighbors. There's no level of enforcement with that, and it's a Saturday.
It's going to happen.
It's not like it's normally during the week that we're able to go through and try to keep the gates closed before people come in. They'll just come in earlier. I mean, you cannot avoid having people participate in this, and I think it's a huge infringement to say you can't have a guest at a house that you pay for and HOAs you pay for. You can't tell people they cannot have a guest because there's certain people that don't necessarily want it to happen. And I think shut your lights off and don't participate.
If you choose not to participate.
And I didn't mean to put words in your mouth, so I just want to be clear. What is your solution? Do you want police? Do you want to sell wristbands? Do you want to keep the gates restricted? Or do you want to open them?
I don't want 1,000 people or 3,000 people walking around on our streets with the chance of causing some injury to some of our residents.
Do you want police present?
Well, you could have one at each gate, and it wouldn't take 10 police.
Okay, so we have one. Your suggestion is one at each gate. Okay. Do you want to sell wristbands?
Ron, let's stop.
I just want to understand the solution.
Let's stop this because you're just trying to put me down with this.
I'm not. I really
want. We're trying to have a.
You all decide and do what you want, but I just want to be on record stating that I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, but
you can't be opposed without a solution.
On record and then coming up with a solution, because you can go on record and say I'm opposed, and then if somebody gets sick, you could say I told you so. But we need a solution.
We need a solution.
So people don't get sick. If in fact we do
having 3,000 people walking on the street is not a solution.
I think I've been involved with the Halloween for 5 years now. This was my only rehab, and I think the most wristbands we've sold were about 1,200.
1,300 last year.
So 1,300 last year. So we had 1,300, and you figure how many per door. So if we have 2,000 people on the streets over 550 acres of property, but they're confined to the street. So I think the question is the point is a valid point. It is. But to compare indoor activity to outdoor activity, I don't think it is. And I agree with Melanie. We're a deed-restricted community. We can support and uphold our covenants, but we cannot infringe on people's rights to move freely about their community. So even if we do say we're going to cancel Halloween for people coming in and selling of wristbands for guests, I don't think we can stop residents from going out and trick-or-treating, because even if you say we're not going to have it, they could still do it. We can't restrict their movement amongst their own community. Correct. So by trying to solve a problem, I think we create a problem. And as a board, I think we need to come up with an amicable solution to Halloween, which I don't think is free for all, and I don't think is a shutdown. I think there has to be some place where we can mitigate. And I think some of the guidelines are good. And I agree with others. Most people probably won't 6 foot socially distance. So I'm kind of at a quandary too. What do we do? And I don't think the solution is not to have it, because if we don't have Halloween, then we could say we're not being hypocritical because we don't have this room open. But then I want to see bocce, basketball, tennis, and pickleball canceled.
I just don't see how that's. I've just not heard a solution how we completely restrict Halloween. I think what we're doing is restricting Halloween by, think about this. My mother, in order to come through the gate, has to pay just to visit my home on Halloween. That is an extraordinary measure that we're taking, and we're doing that to restrict. We're not putting on Halloween. Halloween's been here for 100 years. It occurs outside Sandoval. It's not a Sandoval-sponsored event. What we're doing is taking an extraordinary measure to limit and put the burden on every resident that brings a guest in to pay for the police. We're not providing anything. We're not tapping into our social budget. We're actually requiring residents to pay to just bring a guest. And that is not putting on this event. It's restricting the event. And I just don't see an alternative. And I haven't heard one.
Did I hear you say, though, Casey, we are limiting wristband sales to 1,000? Is that correct? Or there is no limit to wristband sales?
No limit.
There's not a limit. We're putting by appointment only, which last year it was very readily available. So we're putting that in place, but there's not a restricted amount. Residents must buy. It's not open to the public. They can't just walk in. So if you planned on already having a guest coming to your home, you just need to make sure that they have a wristband when they're coming to visit.
And the wristbands, the numbers will be linked to the resident. So, we can see if somebody wearing a wristband gets jammed up, whatever, who sponsored them. Or
I would think maybe a compromise also along these lines, and again, we're just thinking this out because we need to, is maybe limit the sales of wristbands so we do limit the amount of people coming into our community, and we do have some sort of control over that.
So what do you do when you run out of wristbands and somebody wants to have their mother come visit that night and they're not allowed to come visit because they don't have a wristband? That was the only reason why we didn't think it would be nice, for guests only get a wristband, but we're utilizing this tool to limit the capacity that comes in, to try to limit the capacity that's on the streets. So a guest would actually not be able to even visit that evening if they didn't have a wristband, outside of a medical emergency or something like that, obviously.
And I think it is restricted to a certain amount per household. Is that correct?
If you have in it's not in this Halloween setup. There's no restriction of the amounts.
I don't think there was last year.
On the amenities, there's a certain amount of guests you can have on the amenities. This is actual sidewalks, roads, streets, your street, your home. So we don't limit the guest that you can have at your house. If you want to have a family party.
We have previously, I don't know, we have previously during what we call the first round, limited the amount that a family member could. So somebody couldn't come in and buy 100 tickets.
Yeah, that was my understanding when we did
down the
that.
street.
Okay.
So there was a limit to the first round that you could, so it would affect everyone to have the option.
And I think that's a reasonable approach.
So what's reasonable?
I think that we've done that in the past. I don't think it's unlimited.
For residents?
What's
reasonable?
Invite your whole class.
What I would do is, because we have done that in the past.
Okay, we'll look it up.
See what we did.
But I think that is a way that we can further restrict it, frankly.
Well, and the other thing, too, is, we know that we do always have a large group that's up in phase one. And, I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to be all crowded close together. The community is huge. I mean, I would ask residents, spread out, especially... especially if you're not having visitors here and you're just out with your family, phase one, phase two.
I know a couple streets
like,
are
let's go to
a couple
those
streets are talking about having their own block party,
right?
Which is again getting
Yeah, try not to just all huddle down in that one.
And
area.
the police, when they were approached about coming back in, Deanna Cox, who's worked the detail the last 2 years, she's aware that they'll tell people to keep moving also. Mm-hmm. So moving outdoors versus an indoor gathering with, forced air, ventilation, whatever, you can't compare the two with the open air and outside, in my opinion.
I don't think so.
All right, Bill, Al, what are your thoughts?
I don't support Halloween in general, but I do support your attempts to mitigate this issue as much as possible. My personal solution to this is my lights will be out, my door will be locked.
Personal solution is he'll be at home with his lights off and his doors locked.
Yes, and it's all about choice.
Right.
Some residents may want to just take their kids to people they know and keep it small. Some want to have a block party. The residents are responsible for their guests. The guests are required to have the wristbands.
But I still think, though, I agree it's choice for the residents, but as a board, we need to have, if they want to have their block party, it's an individual party. So are they going to be following the CDC guidelines for individual group gatherings? Mm-hmm. So again, if it's going to happen as a board,
right,
we need to come together and say, here's what our, a policy and procedure is going to be if it's going to happen. So maybe we need to massage this a little bit better, especially with the first round of this is you're only allowed to have, because as Don and I were just saying, you're going to get somebody who, as we well know, there have been people in here who aren't family members or that familiar unit, if you will, which it says in the guidelines. Somebody could buy 150 tickets and filled 3 bus loads up, and we just blew the whole intent of keeping the community safe.
Mm-hmm. We'll manage it. I mean, and we'll adhere to what the social committee recommends as far as quantity and first phases and rounds, but we surely wouldn't allow someone to come. We'll still manage it, and we still have that ability. So I think that's great to implement.
And we'll definitely get the CDC guidelines out to everybody, addressing the Halloween, so they can see what the concerns, and they can, again.
It might even happen, too, where the city or the county comes out and says,
right,
because of a potential, wave 2 or whatever they may be calling for, that it has been, if they can do that, or that's their recommendation. But when I first saw Don's CDC, I wasn't aware of that. It was quite alarming to me. So I got on my iPad and Googled, what is Disney doing?
Mm-hmm. They canceled their parade.
Because they were really on the forefront for that. And there's a lot of Universal Studio places that are having Halloween with guidelines. So right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not here to say who's right or wrong, but I think if it goes on, we as a board really need to put policies and procedures in place that's going to be most protective for our residents.
All right. Well, I would suggest currently you should have from the board package the social distancing for trick-or-treating, as well as the plan and logistics. Any edits, comments, suggestions, come back to Casey and myself. And then I'm continuing to monitor the Florida Department of Health as well as Lee County to see what mandates or restrictions or any how they were addressing Halloween. At this point, they haven't put anything out there yet. But we'll definitely get this. I'll ask the Communications Committee to get the link out for CDC, so again, people can be informed and make their decisions. Anybody else? Any comments?
No.
I just wanted to make a comment. I guess I can kind of see it both ways. I think this we started out years ago when we were trying to sell homes, getting as many people in Sandoval as possible. Now I really don't see that as a reason. I would like to see the numbers lessen every year. I don't know if it would. If it would be possible to, like Melanie said, spread it out. Maybe have pink bracelets go in the Trafalgar Gate. People start trick-or-treating at Ashbury Circle. They're not going to make it all the way down to, Verdmont. They just won't. After 2 or 3 streets, people tend to tire out. If we could spread it out that way, or maybe limit the numbers. Maybe instead of have 1,000 limit or 750 or whatever we want to do, and use this as a stepping stone, and maybe next year pinch it down a little tighter, and try not to have as many people in here, because I don't understand why we want to have so many outsiders come into our community.
General public, and that's the big misnomer. Ideally, and maybe I'm being naive here, a resident buys the wristbands for their guests, and it's not open to the public.
It's not open. It's residents should be allowed to have guests. A lot of us bought into this community because it was family friendly. Mm-hmm. How you can say we're not going to allow anybody to trick or treat is just astronomical to me. I'm sorry, I'm a loss for words.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we have restricted. I definitely have no problem with Sandoval residents trick or treating in Sandoval.
My only child to trick or treat by herself.
The kids want to have their friends.
That's what you're telling me?
And their cousins and their family.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, I think you can. I don't think it should be unlimited. I think, I don't think your daughter should be able to have 150 guests come trick or treat with her.
We said 4 or 5 guests, but I'm hearing only Sandoval residents should be allowed to trick or treat, and they shouldn't have any guests.
I don't even know.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if we cut it back to a reasonable amount of people, because I don't think what is happening is that 3 or 4 people are coming to each house. I don't think that's happening. I think, people are buying, 10, 12, 15 tickets.
Well, we have capped the amount per household in the past. I don't think anyone objects to that here. No. I think it's a valid solution, and we've done it in the past. And I think for the past 3 years, we have quadrupled the price of the wristbands, and we have decreased Halloween, restricted it every single year.
Yes.
And I think the goal is to basically eviscerate it.
Well, I don't think that's ever going to be possible. I think there's always going to be trick or treating.
That's the part I don't understand.
Answer this. I see that we're paying. I guess it's not an out-of-pocket cost, but there is the event insurance for $250. Can somebody tell me what that covers? What does the insurance cover?
It's additional. It's additional.
Is that liability
insurance?
Liability insurance, so we don't get hit with what happened 3 years ago?
Liability insurance is now astronomical at $150,000 because one of the cases happened at Halloween.
Well, that's not fair, frankly. That was the smallest case we've had. Then let's talk about the numbers that we have here at the clubhouse. The social activities were by far in majority. Well, I mean, it's not even the amount of money we're talking about in comparison is not apples and oranges. I mean, we had one small incident that was below our deductible at that time. Compare that to what the actual aggregate claims are that have to do with the clubhouse. Outside the clubhouse.
I agree with you 100%, Ron. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just asking, what are we getting? Is this liability insurance that we're purchasing here? Or what is it?
Through the GL policy. It was purchased last year. I don't know, I can let you know further detail, but typically if you have a farmer's market or, that's something additional
It's available for a minimal amount, and it's recommended. So that's what's been done in the past, and I surely, if you have the opportunity to have additional insurance, would go for it at that. So, and I think as management, I would say, we manage the holiday as best as we can without infringing upon rights. As the GM here, don't want to not have guidelines around it. I think, that would not be wise. So I think placing guidelines around something that's going to happen is wise. And I think we absolutely still have further discussion to do. The committee, I think the information can go back, set the amounts, and other ideas can be passed around.
At what point, though, if the committee does come up with any additional, would the board have their input on that? Because I believe, again, the committee is going to make suggestions. The board, again, it's our job to institute policies and procedures, not a committee. So I wouldn't feel comfortable giving that task over to a committee without my first eyes on it and approving that.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
All right, so the two documents that were shared in the board package, the logistics and the plan that we addressed, as well as the social distancing, we'll bring this into check with the CDC guidelines, and should Florida Department of Health or Lee County come out with anything further, we'll include. There is a social committee virtual on Tuesday, I believe, the 29th at 4 o'clock. So we can take this back to them and further revamp the actual plan as far as the restrictions, as we discussed. And I will look to see on the previous events what the wristband limitation per household was. I just don't remember off the top of my head having seen it.
And I guess I just have a question. If we were to limit it just to residents, how is that enforced?
Yeah, exactly.
How, is there a plan B that we can talk through? I just don't know how you can enforce that.
That was my question. How is that even a viable alternative?
We would have to spend a lot more money on police and literally hire police to
it would be
just
the entire day.
And it would be all day long.
And so my mother or my father can't come visit that day.
And they wouldn't. You would have no visitors that day. Okay.
Yeah, so it definitely will be a modified, and again, we will have the restrictions in place. It'll be a modified trick or treat. It won't be the door to door. Residents have to get with the program once they see the CDC. Hopefully, it came out Monday. It's in the public domain. They should be aware.
And we'll get the communications committee to send that link out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Al, were you going to say something?
Yeah, well, I would just, I would be okay with, limiting the number of bracelets, wristbands that a household could purchase. If whatever the committee would come up with, and 5 or 6, whatever it is, I think that would solve a lot of problems. And like I said, if we could get it spread out a little more, saying, a certain color wristband comes in at Trafalgar, certain color comes in at Veterans, whatever.
Trafalgar, there's nowhere to park is the problem.
That is a problem.
We're going to have police at both gates, at all 3 gates, correct?
Veterans Gate, because there's no guest vehicle traffic allowed in, so they would suggested that they park up at the shops. At Trafalgar, there's no parking, that the guests would have to enter as pedestrians with wristbands.
You're going to have the same challenge.
In Pine Island, there's no available parking, so it's problematic.
Right.
And also from the resources, we would need additional police station then at these gates checking for the wristbands.
But just for residents, if it's just you and you've got don't go all the way down. Like, you know, that's where there's going to be a lot of crowds. And honestly, I think there's a lot of parents that are doing homeschooling and their kids aren't even doing face-to-face.
Right, exactly.
I don't know that a lot of parents are going to be even really wanting to put their kids in that position. You know, you might go to 2 houses, so you did it.
That's what I'm saying. They would, you know, select the specific houses they know. And
right. And maybe there won't be a big demand for wristbands. Who knows?
Exactly, but it'll definitely be a modified trick or treat. We'll have the restrictions, and then limiting the number of wristbands will be yet another restriction.
Right.
And like I said, I will look to see from the flyers from the previous years if I just don't remember off the top of my head if the wristbands were restricted. And we'll share the CDC information. I think it's important for the residents to be informed and make their decisions. And chances are they've already seen it and they know the concerns.
So will we go as far as to say that this board will follow the CDC recommendations and any mandates that might be city or county, come from the city or the county?
Correct. The that we have in the suggested guidelines are aligned with the CDC currently. Like I said, as of Tuesday morning, Florida Department of Health and Lee County have not yet issued any guidelines. I think everybody was waiting for CDC.
I just think, be careful the 2 words, guidelines and mandates. Because
I didn't say mandates.
No.
Oh.
Alan mentioned mandates. So, are we going to follow CDC guidelines or CDC mandates or DOH mandates or guidelines? So far, the CDC has never issued a mask mandate.
Right.
Or there
Right.
have been
That's
guidelines.
Yeah. Guidelines.
So, if you're going to say you're going to follow their guidelines, we can't have Halloween. So be careful on the verbiage here.
No, we can have Halloween.
No. CDC guidelines are saying there are guidelines. It is not recommended to have Halloween.
No, it says the door-to-door Halloween trick-or-treating is what they're saying.
Correct. So.
And we're not looking to do the door-to-door.
Driveway to driveway or door to door.
Driveway to driveway.
No,
it's the contact. It's the touching of the doorbells and the doorknobs and whatnot.
Handing out candy.
I know, but it's
so be careful with the verbiage that we say we're following guidelines or mandates.
Okay.
I'm just saying that.
All right, I appreciate that.
As a contract negotiator, shall and may are 2 words that
don't
get you in trouble.
Never show shall. All right.
Kathy, I think Al was asking if we were going to vote that should CDC, State of Florida, Lee County, or City of Cape Coral impose more stringent regulations, that our policy would adopt to those more stringent regulations. Is that a fair stating on what you were asking, Al?
That's a fair statement.
My position is yes. Anybody else?
I think that's what the plan is, right?
Right. I mean, if something, I think this is tentatively as what we know today.
What we know today, correct.
Right? If in 2 weeks from now,
right.
there's this.
Continue to monitor and see, and we'll adjust accordingly. Or if the Lee County comes out and says ban, or Cape Coral, we'll modify or we'll align it according to what their recommendations are, their guidelines are, as best we can.
That works for me.
May hold on that October 6th start of the sales to like the next week,
We're going to vote on that?
It's a fluid situation.
We may set that, and at the drop of a dime, we need to switch something.
Oh, absolutely.
It's.
And I know residents were very anxious to know, but again, we were waiting to see what CDC was coming out. We knew we were going to discuss it tonight. We weren't able to get ahead of with the messaging, and that we were waiting to see what CDC came out with. So.
Do we have a motion on the table, or is this just a discussion?
I open the floor up for discussion. Do you want to make a motion?
No, I'd be happy to listen to yours.
I'm just discussing right now.
Al, do you want to make a motion? I can't hear
No,
him.
I'm just discussing.
If we're done with discussing, I think we need to move on to whether we're going to make a motion.
Right. All right, is there any more discussion? All right, at this time, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'm going to give a stab at it to begin the conversation. So my motion is to adopt the current proposed social distancing for trick-or-treat guidelines as delineated in today's correspondence, along with adopting the Sandoval Halloween trick-or-treat logistics and pricing guidelines. Also, to have the opportunity to formally vote on the social committee's amendments, if any, to Halloween, and also if, in the fact that anything should arise from CDC, the City of Cape Coral, Florida Department of Health, that would preclude us from having trick-or-treat, we would do so. Somebody wants to polish that.
Pretty good.
Do you have it written down there?
No.
You're gonna have to listen to the tape.
Roll tape.
All right, so the motion on the table was to adopt the proposal that was shared in the board package. And I know it hasn't been shared with the residents, but we will, when we're in a better position to get it out to everybody, it will be forthcoming. Adopt the proposal, the guidelines that we put together in support of a modified trick-or-treat here in Sandoval, aligned with the CDC guidelines. Adopt the Sandoval logistics and pricing proposal that we have. I would add that we would limit the wristbands, the number of wristbands per residence, and we'll look back to see what it was in previous years. I just don't know off the top of my. I don't think any of us know off the top of our heads.
I thought it was 6.
I thought it was 6.
I don't want to say that.
I don't
number.
hold me to
Yeah,
that.
that's how I feel.
That was
I don't
round one. There was a number for round one, and then there was a number for round two.
Okay.
Once everybody had like that week opportunity.
And then
if
once
there
the
were any
social committee refines that the board will have the position to vote on it, and on the amendments, as you said, and that should something arise, whether Cape Coral, Lee County, Florida, or CDC, that it may preclude us, right, from hosting or holding or having trick or treat. Is there a second? And don't make me repeat it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Melanie seconds. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 I only heard one on the phone.
I think it was Al.
Aye.
Bill, okay. So 7, I saw 7. Okay, very good. Scott made the motion, and Melanie seconded. Have Scott repeat it. Have Scott repeat it again. I can compare notes with you. He freestyled. Well, that's what I said. Do you have it written down? That'd be helpful. All right. Next on the agenda, the new business is to establish the annual meeting date. And this was something, we received an inquiry from Becker that they need 90 days advance notice. We were looking at holding the annual meeting date, and that would include the election in the March timeframe, similar to this March. So I'm suggesting Thursday, March 4th for discussion. And we would need to let Becker know, respond back to Becker with our dates.
I move we have an annual meeting on January the 1st.
At your house. No. So they established the annual meeting date. Anybody have an issue with the Thursday, March 4th?
No, I don't.
All right. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to have the annual meeting on March 4th.
Okay. A second?
I withdraw my motion and second Melanie's.
Okay.
Oh.
Good gosh. All right. So any further discussion on that? So the elections will be held then on March 4th. And all of the electronic voting and all the prep, all of that will be done beforehand with the actual voting results revealed on Thursday, March 4th. All right. So can we have a vote on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. On the phone?
Aye.
Al, did we hear you?
Yes, hi.
Oh, we did. Okay, so 7 unanimous. Okay, very good. All right, and last, a solicitation for additional agenda items. Does anyone wish to add anything to the agenda at this time?
No.
Okay. All right, so I move to adjourn to the open forum. We have quite a few residents' comments. Is there a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got Scott. I heard him first. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask Casey to present the comments, the open forum comments that were presented by noon today. We have quite a few, and some of them are the same topic, but she'll present them all now, starting now. Okay? Oh, remember Rick Devine, the construction.
Is that with the agenda item?
I can answer that question.
Okay.
We do have.
Yeah, we flipped it to you.
We have 3 board members who are also residents of Sandoval on that committee, and we also have one of the members that is of the committee has experience in construction, Joe Beach. So I think that his answer is that it is covered.
Okay. So Rick Devine.
Okay.
Rick Devine, I'm not sure what street he was on. He raised a question regarding residents' participation, right? Do you have the actual question? I don't. Rick Devine asked about whether or not there was resident representation
No, he's looking
on the
for
construction
oversight,
committee.
supervision.
And Don, as the liaison, confirmed that there are 3, one of which was Joe Beach.
3 and Joe Beach. So
3
Ron,
and Joe
Bill,
Beach.
and I, and Joe Beach.
Okay. All right. And was there a second part?
I'm looking for it.
I thought I handed it to you when we started.
I stuck it at the back of the file, sorry.
Okay, here we go. Sorry.
Number 11, I put it to the back. So Mr. Devine sent in, will there be a resident liaison other than board members? Follow-up question from last month when I asked about OSHA certified craft after a long dissertation from Stevens, the answer was no. Have you revisited this decision? And so we deferred to the board construction liaison, who said, Don's answer was?
My answer was that we have board. He said, were there any residents on the involved? Well, all the board members are residents, and Joe Beach is a resident, and we still have a committee made up of several others.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to move
Yep,
into the open
please,
forum stuff.
please.
Thank you, everyone, for sending in all your inquiries and concerns to the board. We did. This is only items that came in during that specific time frame.
Before noon.
Before noon. Today. So the first one is from Mr. Swaggart, and this one is in regards to some stormwater questions, and he wanted to state that in his opinion that the 2 invoices from stormwater correction should be paid by the HOA, not the homeowners.
is looking to get an answer from the board. The board is still evaluating, and we hope to have an answer in the near term. First one, let me just go through
Yeah.
these.
And a thank you to Jim Swiger, too, all of his efforts with the storm sewers and the stormwater projects. Remarkable,
Knowledge.
remarkable volunteer.
Okay. The next one, Mr. Lang sent in. I'll be moving more of my belongings from my home in Pennsylvania, and he specifies his address. Drive on November the 2nd. As part of the move, I rented a 20-foot Class C RV. I will return the RV on the 3rd. I need a place to park the RV overnight and requested getting a permit to park at the community center. I was told I was not allowed. I think the HOA needs some flexibility for requests of this nature, and he's inquiring, I think a limited number of permits should be issued on a first-come, first-served basis with restriction for one night only for larger vehicles. So with that, a Class C RV is considered a mobile home, and in our policies for vehicles, number 13 is that commercial vehicles or equipment, including mobile homes, recreational vehicles, pickup trucks, ATVs, golf carts, three-wheelers, boats, and other watercraft trailers or stored vehicles may not be parked anywhere within the properties other than enclosed garages, except that law enforcement vehicles may be parked in driveways at any time. Recreational vehicles and boats may be parked in the driveways for not more than 24 hours while loading and unloading, but not more than twice per month. So with this being a mobile home and not a trailered recreational vehicle or boats, is the reasoning why management did not authorize the mobile home to be parked there.
So in this case, does anyone want to discuss, or does anyone see the need for a special accommodation or any concerns or discussion?
Do you have a capability to have those type of vehicles in the clubhouse parking? Where possibly could they park them? Where's the option?
I think there are several places just out on Pine Island, but I don't know any of the names, and I don't know what the availability
You
is.
see the boat trailers and then...
What was the time frame he was looking for again?
November the 2nd and 3rd.
One night, November 2nd or 3rd.
Don't quote me on this, but I know that certain commercial vehicles are allowed to overpark even for longer than overnight in the shopping center. To the rear of there, if you go by, you will notice tractor trailers, and other sorts. So I think they have gotten permission from them to do that, so that might be an option.
It's Surfside or Publix?
Surfside.
Oh, it's Surfside. Okay, we can suggest that back to them. That would be helpful. Okay. Thank you.
We would just recommend looking into it, not
Yep.
recommending doing it, because they have their restrictions there. Okay. The next one is another one from Mr. Lang, and welcome to the community, moving in. Is it possible to provide a more detailed level for agenda items? This would better help understand the issues under discussion. For example, the item of new business, Halloween, is the discussion about safety procedures, input concerns, safe for gate procedures and fines and levies. Same thing. I'm new to the community. I want to gain a better understanding of the nature and process for community input. So we follow best practices for agenda items as well as standard practices at a higher level, stating the topic rather than more elaborate, and that would be included in listening into the meeting as well as the meeting minutes that would be drafted and then later posted to the website.
Very good.
The next item is from Lisa Roundtree, and the first one, Lisa, it's Major Roundtree, feels the privileges of minors to move about and play within Sandoval is restricted. On the September the 2nd, I was informed by management that all future activities implemented for residents by Lifestyle and Social Committee would require an adult to be with a child 14 years of age or under who wants to participate in an activity, and if at the playground, under 12 would need to be accompanied by an adult. These restrictions are unlike in the community at large. These are more stringent than rules governing minors for the state of Florida as well as the city of Cape Coral. In addressing item number 1, the resident handbook has been in place for many years, and no changes have been made in this past year with regards to that. This board currently has made no existing policies regarding, no new existing policies regarding minors.
And I'm just going to add, and then I think Ron wants to say something. On September 3rd, within 24 hours of that communication that went out on September 2nd, we provided clarification. There was a miscommunication regarding that age 14. It's that there was an incident at the basketball court where kids were trespassed and whatnot, and we reiterated the rule is that those individuals age 14 and up can have up to 3 guests. However, the resident must be on the court accompanying them while they're there playing. The reason why the kids were trespassed was the fact that there were no guests, no residents with them, or we couldn't match them up to a resident, from what I understand. So the resident handbook outlines, and it's been in place, these age references for the pool, for liability and safety concerns. Under 14, an adult is required. The playground, under 12, adult supervision. The sports courts, the only issue there was bocce specifically, says under 18, parent or guardian must be present to play. In the fitness center, again, from a safety standpoint, 12 and under is prohibited, and 13 through 15 ages 13 through 15 require an adult, and 16 is okay to be there, 16 and above unaccompanied. So the ages vary depending on which amenity, but I don't know, I'll let you talk.
Well, I was CC'd on this email, and initially I was a little taken back because the email references a September 2nd communication, and within 24 hours that a second communication was sent that clarified that, in fact, the September 2nd communication wasn't accurate. And there was no reference to the September 3rd communication in this email at all. So I don't know if it wasn't seen by this resident, but I would encourage this resident to view the September 3rd communication that clarifies our position. Further, I would add that I've attended now 18 board meetings, and I'm here to listen to questions and comments and to take any action that's needed, and I have not once heard any issue when it came to restrictions of kids. So when I hear this, that this is an issue, or I hear comments made on Facebook that this community isn't receptive to kids, that's discouraging to me. It hurts our values, it hurts our reputation, and nothing constructive is being brought to the attention of this board. Therefore, we are not aware of any issue. And this email, frankly, again, is referring back to a September 2nd communication that was corrected within 24 hours. So I will send this resident the September 3rd communication, and I will ask for specifics of what their concerns are, because so far I haven't heard any specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, to add to this is that, yes, there will be some times when there are age guidelines for some of the lifestyle activities that the association provides. Okay, this one is from Ms. Barner, and it reads, in regards to CenturyLink, Casey, prior to you coming on board, we had addressed the issues residents are having with our cable and internet. The prior board signed a 10-year contract, if not more, and not sure how many years we have left in the contract. But since the CenturyLink has discontinued the Prism portion of the cable we have, when residents call, they try to sell us new cable, yet we pay for a service
that they are decommissioning from homeowners by 2021. This was addressed this year when the stay-at-home was put into place because we have a lot of people home and using the internet. However, on the daily, people are posting about slow internet, dropping connections every day, and or not working at all. Cable is out at some residents and not others. The only resolution I feel was addressed is they clarified what numbers should be used to place calls, almost as if not to allow waves of us to ask questions about our current technology. Why or how is the prior contract allowed to stay in place when we were sold a product that they don't support fully? People were out of internet for 8 days. They keep making Band-Aid fixes, and that isn't going to be a long-term solution, especially if we have 5 more years of this technology. They're taking away channels. If the original technology we were sold isn't the same technology today, how is this logical? We have to stay locked in with this. They're discontinuing from homes for a reason, but Sandoval does not get upgraded. These are answers everyone is wanting. So we do want to recognize it is a 10-year contract with 5 years left to go. And when there was an extensive amount of days that the internet was out, and residents did make express their concern to the board members did meet with CenturyLink in April. And were able to get a credit applied to a next invoice that was upcoming with that. And also management, as well as a few of the board members, would be willing to work to schedule a meeting with CenturyLink to raise these concerns and report back. With that, we also want to establish a good working relationship with CenturyLink and continue to resolve and work with them to get best knowledge and things that we can help implement for better service. Okay.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
I'd like to comment on CenturyLink.
Scott.
Myself being one of them who is totally dismayed with the level of service or lack of service and channel availability that we get with CenturyLink. I upgraded my package to another one, and I would say probably when I first got it, there was probably, let's just say, 50 other additional different channels. When I called CenturyLink, they said, well, you're getting the channels. I said, well, I'm getting Home Shopping Network 16 times. So what I heard you say is
good for your wife.
Thank goodness she doesn't do that. But what I heard you say is maybe there might be a committee that would want to sit down with CenturyLink, and I would strongly suggest that whether it's a board members or some of the members of the community who want to get involved with that we task a committee first and foremost with reading through that contract again and seeing what the level of service we were told we were supposed to have, compare it to the level of service we have now,
the MPBS 30
and then take it from there, because I don't believe what the residents are paying for they are getting, whether it's channel-wise or level of service. So, and to see what I think all board members know how that contract was written in the opt-out clause. So, but I do think we need to address that in the very near future for the benefit of our residents.
And maybe possibly to add to that, being ahead of the game as far as what are the other options and the costs that would come with those other options. So that way, if it is something that came up, maybe the committee could investigate what other options would they be and what would the cost be for those, so that you know what you have and what you're paying for. You know that, but what is out there and what would that cost? So maybe looking into that as well.
So they removed the app, the Prism app, which actually I used all the time, which unfortunately is gone. Is it even an option to get that back?
All right. So is there a motion then to establish an ad hoc committee?
I'd make that motion.
Okay. Scott? Is there a second? All right. Melanie, second. Discussion? Bill, I know you had some thoughts on this previously and exploring options and revisiting the contract.
There was a typo in the contract, so we're being charged for 1,438 units when we only have 1,425. But they've been unwilling to address that unless we redid the whole contract. That was back prior to my being on the board. I don't know that they would even talk to us about it now. But like I said, we're now looking at 4.5% increase on the video portion per year for the remaining 5 years.
Okay. Anybody else? Al, any comments?
No.
All right. So the motion is to establish an ad hoc group to take a look.
We've adjourned.
Channel-wise, level of service-wise, and the opt-out clause with the existing contract.
We've adjourned the meeting.
Oh, we can't introduce it. Okay. Sorry. All right, we'll put this on the agenda for next time. Thank you. I'm in the mode. I'm sorry.
Well, it sounded reasonable.
So yeah, it sounded easy, but yeah, okay. So table to next, yeah, okay. But definitely need to look at it. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, this is from Ms. Bernard. Over the last 6 months, I've seen what I perceive as a decline in services provided in Sandoval. Calypso Park, trash cans overflowing, doggy stations not cleaned. I don't understand how a community of 1425 homes can function with one, and right now no maintenance staff. It is unrealistic to think that one person can provide not only clean up services, but repair services too. We seem to have money for landscaping, but not for maintenance staff. How can we have so many pool staff, albeit part-time, but cannot afford full-time qualified maintenance staff? Quite frankly, this is very worrisome. Merely shifting a pool person to maintenance position is not the answer. I understand that the budget is set for the year, but shouldn't there be monies left for a maintenance person? My second comment is, I think the board is using COVID as an excuse for opening up the clubhouse for residents and pushing. Board is using COVID as an excuse for opening up the clubhouse for residents and pushing the continual use of virtual meetings. Sorry, CDC has limitations. Sorry. CDC has. So this is my second comment is I think the board, residents, and pushing the continuing use of virtual meetings. Sorry, CDC has limitations on numbers, and they are just ignoring. I realize that construction will be starting soon, at least I hope so, and this will be a moot point. Right now, currently, management is optimizing resources, and I'm cross-training employees. And the trash and grounds are still being completed 3 to 4 times per week. And in regards to the clubhouse, we are still operating under the advisement of the association. The board's operating under advisement of the association council and guidance from Pope management.
Okay, thank you.
Does that include picking up not only trash in the receptacles, but thrown about? I know myself and some other board members have had to go about and actually clean up and take bags of trash out of Calypso and other areas. So I assume that will be something that's taken care of in the future.
Right, the grounds, when
Yes,
you say
correct.
grounds.
Grounds as well. That actually was done this morning. First thing, pool attendant, we only had a few people at the pool, do a quick trash run, pick up the trash, and so that was taken care of. So yes, absolutely. I do still need to fine-tune things, checklist, making sure, and following up, but I've been out there as well picking up trash that has been there for quite some time. So I think fresh new eyes has been nice out there.
So then, quick question. So then what is Pope's intent to either fill that position or operate at we'll call it status quo until fiscal 2021?
So we're breaking up the pieces, and part of that, well, we're also going to have the clubhouse that's going to be down for several months. So we're limiting, right now there's a few light bulbs that could technically be changed by maintenance personnel, but right now we're optimizing what we have. We've broken up the position right now to where the grounds pieces are being handled by multiple staff members on shifts and rotations. And then the maintenance will be pieced out at through a company, through a vendor, and that will be at a lesser hourly rate as needed.
And that way, we're not paying for 40 hours a week maintenance right now. That's not, and most of the items that I've been bringing to the board or have had worked on were not something that the previous maintenance personnel was able to do, nor is it typically a one person. It's been vendors that need to come and fix items. So having, someone maintenance to do that would not have helped at this time for those items. Anything else?
Very good.
The next one's from Mr. and Ms. Westron. There are 2 items we'd like to have discussed during the meeting. CenturyLink, there are so many outages recently, what can be done? And we just recently discussed that in a previous agenda item, or sorry, not agenda item, but open forum item. We are still unhappy with the landscaping, which has been on many meetings of late. As we live in phase 2 and pay for our HOA fees, is there a way to come off the contract and have reduced HOA fees and do our lawns ourselves? I will say we are continuously monitoring Down to Earth and progress to date. Your dues would stay the same no matter if you did hire your own landscaper or did the landscape yourself. The dues would not change.
Mm-hmm.
The next one's from Ms. Chaplin. Why don't we have a designated maintenance person? The pool personnel are not trained maintenance workers. We need communication when Down to Earth changes days for mowing. Are there going to be assigned neighborhood liaisons in the future? The first one we've addressed in the previous comments, staffing. And to add to that, I will say that the personnel that we do have are very handy. They've been pressure washing and blowing as well, and doing those items that are not necessarily considered a standing around pool, attendant job. The second one is
Down to Earth.
Right. We've agreed with that. The communications should better flow properly. I've recently established a streamlined process this week with AJ from Down to Earth to directly email me the changes as they happen. And then I'll request and ask if the communications committee could post that to the website link for residents to view. Lastly, I did address the neighborhood liaisons. Are we going to be assigned neighborhood liaisons in the future? So I mentioned that in my general manager report. The next one is from Mr. Hernandez.
Casey, before you move on, could I make a statement?
Yes.
On the question of whether we could discontinue the common groundskeeping and go to homeowners doing it themselves, our governing documents say that the HOA will provide that service, not that it may provide that service. So to discontinue, we would have to have a vote of all the homeowners and change our governing documents.
I think in this case, Bill, the context was that the resident wanted to opt out and have a reduced HOA fee if he did his own landscaping.
But that's what I'm saying. Our governing documents say we will provide it, not that we may provide it. So we don't have the option of allowing them to opt out.
Is there a way to come off the contract, which I think there is a way, and that it would need to be addressed. So that one
by street, if the entire street were to agree.
But isn't that all done through phase 2 and 3? You would need a 2/3 vote of the entire population.
The 650 doors.
To have the fees.
No, I think you'd have to have a vote of this. I think it's by street. I think that street would have to vote that they don't want to do it on their street, and then they would be able to opt out.
That's my understanding.
That's the way I believe the initial docs were written, were by.
Because each one of those have street documents.
Each neighborhood would have to.
Each neighborhood has street documents.
The billing is by street. Yeah.
And likewise, a street can get the votes to opt in.
They can opt in. It can go either way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, I mean, but as far as the contract goes, there is, potentially you'd have to weigh out those.
And then I don't know if the street opted out, if they could get out of the contract. It's a 5-year contract with Down to Earth. So it's not just because if your street voted on it, I'm not sure that you could still get out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No, I agreed. Not as an individual opting out. I think that as if the board had enough, feedback from residents continuously and things weren't resulting, that would be a board's decision on the contract as a whole.
But we can clearly say that an individual resident does not have the option.
Correct.
To opt out.
It's the street. It's by
But
street.
even the street, the whole street can choose to get another landscape company, but that doesn't mean that their fees would be reduced.
Correct. In either situation.
I don't think a individual street could opt to get another landscape company, not when you have a contract.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Wasn't that where you would have to have 2/3 of the vote of everybody who's included within that contract?
Well, of that street, but then the contract is for the 680 homes, so I think that contract probably supersedes what the individual neighborhood would vote until that contract was over.
So he's saying if they voted in entirety and you had everyone that they couldn't excuse themselves from the contract, so to speak.
No.
So for lack of service, the HOA can hold the company accountable. So Down to Earth can be held accountable and say you're not fulfilling the requirements of your contract.
Correct.
That would be us opting out of that vendor.
That would be the ask of the contract portion. As far as having reduced fees, if we do our own lawns ourselves, would be you're going to pay the same amount for your association dues as long as the docs say that they will provide landscape.
Right, and in order to change the docks,
yes,
for those 600-something houses, what's required?
I'm not sure, and I don't know.
If the contract with Down to Earth was over, I think that an individual neighborhood, at a certain percentage, could opt out of having lawn service in their neighborhood.
But the individual, and this is what's confusing me, because the individual streets in those neighborhoods, there's never a time where we don't have a contract. So Down to Earth, when that contract is out, as a HOA, we assign another contract.
Well, they could have a vote to opt in or out pending the end of that contract before the next one's negotiated.
Right.
And actually, the contract should be tailored to the ability for streets to opt in and out.
Yes. They're restricted by the way this particular one is written.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Continue. Thank you. Just two more.
Busy month.
I can't.
Oh, this is just
blending in together.
I think it was just the
same. Another question: personnel and maintenance, which we've already addressed by Mr. Hernandez. So that's the same one.
And
then this is we did receive from Mr. Cuddy in regards to the board considering an approval of artificial dog grass, and the response would be that you would need to go through the architecture review process. And I know that we have reviewed this. We've also spoke to the committee, and you would need to go through that process, fill out the application, work through, and if they come across something that they're not sure of, we'll come to the board, they'll come to management, and if we needed to go as far as legal, we would need to get that opinion. So the proper channels would need to be started with this, and then we would go from there.
The application.
Mm-hmm.
Were they looking to do artificial grass in a dog run area or in their yard or?
Right, in a dog run area where it's heavily saturated, and they feel like this would be the best option for their yard. So it's just something that the proper channels, the architecture review committee really needs to review it, give an opinion to the board. Okay.
Casey, are you saying that the architectural review committee has the authority to grant variances on our governing documents?
They have an application. You're not authorizing the ARC to make variances.
No. To go through the process, fill out the application, make the request, and then it's a dispute of it. We would have to look into it further. And at this time, we'd have to see what the feedback from the Architecture Review Committee was. I've yet to see the application, so there's not anything that I can really, but I would like to work with the ARC, and then if we need to also work with the board, if we need an outside opinion, we can do that as well. Does that answer it?
No, my question is, you said they need to fill out the ARC application. What's after that? If the ARC says we don't have authority to grant a variance, what happens next?
Typically in the past, or you're saying that the ARC doesn't have, if there's something in the architecture review guidelines that prohibits this request, then it would be a denied application. And then
then the homeowner would have the right to appeal that?
They have, I mean, at that time, then the board could see that was the outcome of it, and then it could be discussed. But without that taking place, I think it's not quite at the level yet to discuss with the board.
An application is the first step in the process, and to be presented to the ARC.
Okay.
And I think that was the final one.
Just want to go back through it?
That was the final one. So thank you all very much. Have a good evening. Thank you, Vic.